Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Karis Circle. Karis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Karis Books, and Karis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We're delighted to be joined with all of you, wherever in the world you are watching from tonight, and all of our Atlanta friends, entrepreneurs, business partners, to welcome Trudi Lebrón and Rebecca Baruki, who are here to talk about the Antiracist Business Book, an equity-centered approach to work, wealth, and leadership, and Row House Books, which is the publisher of this book, but also was a client of Trudi's and is now really looking at disrupting the standard publishing model in the service of bringing more voices to the table. So, of course, this fits very well with Karis's mission, which is to foster sustainable feminist communities, to work for social justice, and to encourage the expression of diverse and marginalized voices. We are really interested in how people refine their business and nonprofit strategies to actually make what we do on a day-to-day basis reflect what our mission statements say. And I know many of y'all who are watching tonight feel the same way. So first, I'm going to introduce Rebecca Bex, who uses she, they pronouns. They are a mother to 5, self-help and children's author, and the founder and president of Row House. They are also the founder of Wheat Penny Press, which is Row House's children's imprint, and the WPP Little Readers Big Change Initiative. So welcome, Bex.
Thank you.
And welcome, of course, to the person of the hour, Trudi Lebrón, who is the author of the Antiracist Business Book and CEO of Script Flip LLC. She's also the founder of the Institute for Equity-Centered Coaching. Trudi has over 20 years of experience working in communities supporting equity initiatives in schools, nonprofits, and businesses of all sizes. Her expertise sits at the intersection of anti-racism, leadership, business, and personal development. Trudi holds a BA in theater, a master's of science in psychology, and currently is ABD in a PhD program in social psychology. So we know this is an opportunity for folks to get some great questions answered, and we really do encourage you to feel free to ask questions. You can put them in the Ask a Question box at the bottom center of the screen, and Bex and Trudi will work through them if we got time, but I know y'all have a lot to talk about, and so we're going to get right into it. Thank y'all both so much for being here. We're really, really honored and excited.
Thank you, ER.
Thank you for having us.
Wow, here we are. I'm excited to talk to you again. I love talking about this book.
I know. Me too.
So, what I've been thinking about when we were, today, when I was thinking about talking about this book tonight, is all the ways that you have contributed to not only the foundational values and mission statement at Row House, but the ongoing support that you offer. We were on the phone this morning, about another issue that comes up, with human beings being human and interacting on a daily basis. And it wasn't a race issue. It was another identity issue. And I'm interested to know why I'm going to hold up the book, this beautiful book with your gorgeous picture on it. You decided to do the Antiracist Business Book and not the inclusive business book or the diverse business book. Like, what's the deal with the anti-racist part?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question. So there's a few reasons, right? Part of the reason is that I believe that at the end of the day, this is so cliche, right? Like it's always about race. Like, why is it always about race? Because it's always about race, And so we can talk about gender, we can talk about religion, we can talk about ability, we can talk about all other ways that folks are marginalized. And if you take any of those groups and lay race on it, you can't separate race from all of the ways that folks are oppressed. At the end of the day, it's always going to be someone who holds whatever marginalized identities, who is a brown or Black person that is experiencing the most marginalization. So we put race at the core of our work. And I also think that partly because of the social climate that we're in, people are ready to have a conversation about anti-racism in ways that they haven't been before, and in ways that the other forms of oppression aren't going to like lead us to solutions in the same way that looking at it through race is going to provide to us. Mm-hmm. So I just feel like a combination of where we are, a combination of my experience, you know, being that I have been working in equity inclusion through the lens of racial oppression since 2008, and the fact that it's always going to come back to race, no matter what other issue we're talking about. I think we needed to boldly say that.
Well, thank you for that. But something you just said raised my eyebrows a bit when you said we're ready to have the conversation.
Yeah.
I feel that we are having a conversation, and it's, you know, there's a difference between having the conversation, hearing what's being said, and then being ready to show up in a way that is anti-racist. And, you know, I'm curious again, because I'm here to gossip a little bit too. I want to, you know, you're working with some pretty big, important, influential businesses.
Yeah.
Other publishers, life coaching businesses, that the ripple effect is going to be felt very quickly.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you feel? You know, just a temperature check. Do you feel like people are really ready to have these conversations and having them and going into them wholeheartedly? Do you think that a certain type of person is doing it? Like, how do you know, like for the people out there that are working for a business that's having issues, how are they going to measure whether or not their business is ready to do this work? And it's not going to be a waste of time and energy.
Yeah. So I will say that there are people who are not ready. There will always be people who are not ready or not interested or whatever, right? And there will always be people who say that they're ready and are doing it for all of the performative reasons that we know people do things. You know, they do the 1 a year DEI training and check the box, and they treat it as a compliance issue, or they treat it as an HR issue. There's still plenty of that happening. I can say that I think now more than certainly as long as I have been working, people are actually showing up in ways that they haven't before. And so I think that you measure that by a couple things. One is in the investment that people are making in the work. And investment often triggers like thoughts of money, like financial investment. And that is certainly part of it, right? Like if a company is with it for real, they're going to invest in real support, not just like trainings, but actual coaching and facilitation and consulting and guidance, right? But they're not just going to spend money, they're going to spend time. They're going to invest time in meeting with the consultants, in putting committees together. I hate that word, committees, but putting groups, you know, putting teams together who have power and like influence, and who like, but also that they are diverse and inclusive even within the team, right? So they're spending time to work on their internal culture outside of just the training, you know, like the time they're spending on the meeting. And they institutionalize the practices, and they're looking at every element of their business and not compartmentalizing the DEI work. I always give the example of like a school. You know, many universities have a department of inclusion, you know, or a officer of, you know, diversity and inclusion. And what that often creates is a silo within an institution. So everybody else feels like any issues that have to do with race or ethnicity or bias or anything belong in that department, when in fact equity is everybody's responsibility. And in companies that are really about that, you can see evidence that everybody is taking responsibility for the work.
Yeah. I want to give people a little background, but first, because I'm just so incredibly proud of this book, and I say it all the time and every time. I'm such a fan person of you. And so there's a button right below us that you can click on to support Caris, definitely, and then also Trudi and Rojas Publishing. this book, everyone that's read it has come back to me, or there's so many people coming back to me and just saying how fabulous it is and how much it's changing their business already, how many practical tools are in it that are that they're able to share with their bosses, their managers.
Yeah.
I have the great privilege of having worked with you before I built this company.
Yeah.
So I was coming to you as a coach. I was doing book coaching courses, and I had a lot of private clients. And I came to you not about anti-racism, not about, you know, how to make my business anti-racist. It was just how to make my business grow. So you are a totally legit business coach, leader as well, on top of all this other greatness. And so I say I have the great privilege of knowing you before, because I got to build my business, you know, brick by brick from the ground up with these values already infused. And I left another publisher because the investment wasn't there, right? I didn't see the energetic investment there, the true care around changing, you know, what I consider to be racist policies and racist practices and behaviors. But also I saw this institution that to me didn't have the right ingredients to create the thing that they needed to create.
Yeah.
So, and I want you to speak to that about, you know, existing businesses and, you know, the first steps. And when something has been built for so long, like publishing, it's 100 years old.
Yeah.
Like, how do you even begin to have conversations about changing systems and policies and all of that? Because for me, it was easy.
It's always easier to start from scratch, like really with like what you
I mean, I'll say, wait, it was easy for me to start. It is not easy to maintain. I will qualify that statement.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. That is a totally fair statement. So you roll up your sleeves, you know, you go into these institutions, and honestly, like I have learned a lot over the last couple of years too about, you know, organizations and their commitment. And what has always been really important to me isn't just that we're standing in front of people and teaching them, but that our work is effective, right? Mm-hmm. And so now when I work with companies, if people aren't committing to a year of work with the understanding that a year of work is just to see if we're a good fit, and that, like, you know, we're going to continue to work together after, like, that is the intention, right? That this year one, we're going to accomplish some things, but mostly it's going to be relationship building and level setting and values alignment and, you know, things like that. And that the real work, like the dirty work, really happens in like year two. Like, that's when things start to get exciting. Okay. And if companies aren't willing to be open to those kinds of conversations at the beginning, like, we're not even talking to them for much longer. Because we know that our approach to this work is effective, and it's effective because it takes time, because we don't feel pressured to rush and to just hustle workshops here and there, but we're like really building relationships and that trust. And when we have the trust, this is part of the reason why this approach works, is that over the course of the year, especially if you're not just talking at people, but you're really starting to understand their culture too and their values, when you start to give them uncomfortable feedback, the level of trust is so high because you've invested the time to get to know them, that they're so much more open to things that they hadn't seen before. And the speed at which they implement and pivot once that trust is there is faster than you might imagine. So we see big, major changes in a company in 18 months, but the first 7 months was really just like having conversations with people.
You know, that's so interesting, because I think that, I mean, I know we're in this culture that we live and spend so much of our time on social media. And there are a lot of fantastic anti-racism educators. There are a lot of fantastic business coaches doing a lot of work on social media, doing a lot of their work online. But it also gives this, I think when people are there experiencing things, when they're experiencing things so quickly, you know, they want this instant gratification, they think that this is the work, right? Like, following the anti-racism educator is the work. And there really is a relationship there. So it's so interesting what you say about relationships, because it's like, it does take that. not just showing up and hearing like, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it wrong. It's, you know, developing a relationship outside of even the anti-racism conversation.
100%. And the other thing that creates, right, that our culture around social media and learning from social media is that it's a one-way conversation. And it's really easy because of the way that bias works to just assume that the person with the microphone know that the way that they're saying it is the right way, right? And even among anti-racist educators, even among some of the most well-respected scholarly folks, right, there's disagreement even on what words mean sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, so if you have one person saying that this is the definition of racism, which is like such a basic thing, and another person saying, no, that's not right, this is, those two people are going to have a different approach on almost everything after the opening line, right? And on social media, there's not that space to ask questions and to understand, well, why might this framework apply here? Why might it not, apply here? These are not like physical sciences. Social sciences are much more nuanced and work much more from theories and frameworks instead of like exact formulas. And that's actually a big issue that I'm really tracking because there's so much. I think it's just contributing to this culture of people wanting to do it the right way, like to be the right kind of activist, to be the right kind of like call in or call out person. Like it's not helpful.
It's scary. I mean, you know, there's making, you know, there's having the fumble where you trip and you get caught on camera, like falling over and you're like, oh, it's so embarrassing. And then there's the fumble where you say something that could be harmful, you know, that's like really dramatic and nobody wants to be that bad person. But this hyper fixation on doing it the right way, I think has created a lot of discord and divide. Where I think, I mean, personally, I'll just say, because I'm here, it takes all, you know, not everyone's out there marching. Not everyone has access to technology. Not everyone can be the author. You know, you just got to do it your way.
Yeah, totally. Everyone has their role in the movement. That's what I say.
Yeah, you just said it better than me. So you talked about relationships, which are so important. I think relationships and community are everything. But you also said values. You were the first business coach that I ever had, that I ever witnessed, who talked about values first. It wasn't like, how much do you want to make this year? Like, how big do you want your business to be? What's your dream? Like, what's the house look like? What's the car look like? Like, imagine the dream. It was like, what are your values? And I still have hanging in this office my list that I wrote that weekends with you. I'm not going to grab it because I'm wearing boxer shorts under here, so no one needs to see that. So I'm not going to stand up and grab it. But I have these values, and it's like, you know, leave a place better than I found it. You know, be fair in all conversations or whatever, you know, and give as much as I get. And I live those every single day because I'm reminded of them. They're right there front and center. So tell me why you talk about values so much.
I think that the reason that I talk about values so much is because if you let your values be this like living partner in your business, like I think of your values like as the board of directors, like in your head, right? Like that, what's that Pixar movie?
Oh, Inside Out.
Yeah, so almost like that. Like you have like all these instead of emotions, you have all these values kind of sitting around your boardroom, you know, in your brain. And because the world is so divided on what they believe is right or wrong, or what you should do or shouldn't do, or the right way to be or the wrong way to be, because there's not agreement outside, it's even more important for agreement to be happening inside. So if you always make a decision based on your values, you will always be right. I might not like your version of right.
Right.
I might not. And then we're just not going to be friends. You know what I mean? Like if we're that out of alignment,
Right.
You know, like, so that's why I think that starting with your values is critical, not just for business, but for any justice or anti-oppression work. Getting really clear on what you value, what at the end of the day, where's the line going to be? Like, what are you making decisions based on? What can you stand by? And if you make decisions that are in alignment with those, even when you don't agree with other people, you can feel solid. You know, you can feel solid in your decision. This is also really helpful because when we're learning something, it's easy to be swayed by what everybody else says.
Yeah.
But if you're really clear on like, no, this is why I made this decision, I'm hearing that I should do something different, but that is out of alignment with what I believe. That means you don't do it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't. And I think it just keeps you really solid on like who you are. Now, again, I know not everybody believes that way or, you know, would disagree with me, but I really feel I'm because, like I said before, I'm all about what's effective, right? I'm not going to argue back and forth with someone trying to hold them accountable to something that they don't believe.
Yeah.
That's lost. That's a whole lot of wasted energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. Like, there might be people in this world who part of their value system is actually to go out and work with people who believe vastly different things and try to bring them around. But again, not my role in the movement, right? Like, that is not what I'm here to do. One of my values is self-determination, which means that I have to trust the self-determination of another person to say, I don't believe that. I'm going to go over there. That is such a high level of alignment that you have to be operating under.
Oh my gosh, I got to write
alignment, that. One of my other values, by the way.
It's, you know, when I was writing the mission statement for Row House, we we're getting ready to launch, talking to my co-founder, Kristen McGinnis, I went back to the values. And it's like, so what are the core values of Row House? You know, not the mission statement, not like what we want to be, who we want to be, whatever. It's like, what are these core values? Like, from where are we operating, right? And, you know, she's a genius with like the words, and she came up with the CRED commitment, because I was saying different words, and that's community, responsibility, equity, disruption. Because one of my, I think a way I move in the world, the theme is like, I want to shake things up. I want to right wrongs. I want to disrupt when I see something isn't working. And when we're looking at books, when we're looking to bring people in, it's like, I'm looking at like, do they believe in community? Are they here to work in community? Because, you know, you go to another publisher and the authors might not necessarily collaborate. They might not be promoting for each other. And it's like, are you interested in doing this? Do you feel that you are responsible for the words that you say? Do you hold yourself accountable? Are you ready to be held accountable? Like equity, you know, we do that with our contracts and the way that we write policy, and then disruption, you know, with the kind of books we publish, and then also our policy. So I keep going back to those. And you're right, because, you know, even with anti-racism, it feels like a trend sometimes. And there's so many ways to do things. And there's so many, and it's like, this is the right way today, and it's not going to be tomorrow, or we're calling out today, but maybe we got to call in instead. And I'm like, all the words, but what do I believe? Right. What do I believe?
Right.
And it comes back to community, and how do I behave in community? Right. And what is good for the community? Right. Like, how do I show up? So I love that. I mean, I'm always going back to the values. You reminded me this morning. You're like, okay, let's talk about values.
Yeah.
Let's talk about values, and how does this conflict, how to navigate this conflict when you stick the values conversation into it.
Totally. I remember spending lots of years in nonprofit organizations where, you know, you had to like memorize the mission statement and the values, and funders would come in and you would like show them your wall where all the words, you know, all of the words are like on the wall behind glass next to the elevator or something, you know. And I just remember over and over and over giving those tours at one point, and then, you know, younger in my career, like observing those tours and being like, that's not a value. Like, you know, like family, no, that's not a value. That's not how you exemplify. You don't exemplify that here. Peace, mental health, like you don't those aren't things you value. Even equity. I've worked in equity consultancies as a consultant where the contracts were hella inequitable.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
yeah,
that if that's a value, it shows up everywhere. And so that's why the way we teach values is not just to like think about them at the beginning, but actually like when you're making a decision to be like, okay, if you center self-determination, what decision does that lead you to? If you center equity or diversity or liberation or community, like what outcome does that lead you to? So they're very active participants.
So I love you and working with you because of the kind of businesswoman you are. And I want to remind everyone out there, like, get nosy, ask questions, put it in the chat, or there's a question box, like do all that, because we really, really, really want to have this, be an interactive conversation. But, I love you because the type of business person you are, how you show up in business, but also just, who you are as a human being, your story. I tell people a lot, I don't read self-help. I write self-help. I don't read it. I read memoir because I want to know people's stories. I'm reading Viola Davis right now. And it's like, because I just like, how did you get here? Right? Like, I want to know that. The first chapter in your business book is called White People Shit. So I know that this isn't going to be like a Gay Hendricks book. It's not going to be like.
I wanted that to be very clear from the beginning.
So we talk about white people shit, and I'm going to get more into the book. But for right now, I want to ask you, where are you from? Like, give us your story. Yeah. What qualifies you to be here? What do you think other people are, and I'll say this, like, when you started writing this book, and a conversation that I was having in other channels was like, are people going to take this book seriously? Right?
That was very important to me. Remember when when we got the first cover, the first draft of the cover, I was like, this is a serious book. Like, I want to make sure that it looks like a serious book for sure.
Well, you look serious.
It is serious.
This is
I love it. You mean business.
This isn't the first draft.
No. It's not too far off though. I love where we landed. So, okay. So I am a biracial Latina. I grew up in Central Connecticut. I live now, and have always my whole life lived in the same, 20-minute radius from the place that I was born. So I'm a Central Connecticut girl. My father is Afro-Latino from Puerto Rico. My mom is white. And, I explained this in the book, I always, especially growing up in the 80s, as a young girl, just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. The whole, who are you? What are you? What are you is probably the most common question I used to get, right?
Same.
Yeah, what are you? But I remember conversations about oh, you're not this enough, you're not that enough, you're not really this. Is that your cousin? He's too dark. Is that your dad? How is that your dad? You're so light skinned, all of those kinds of questions. And so it puts you in this experience from very young where you're constantly negotiating your identity, and you learn that I say this in the book too, that white folks just get to be white. I've worked with a lot of kids in my career, and I have never heard a white child describe to me that kind of experience of just trying to figure out even where they fit in their family, right? Racially.
Yeah.
So grew up in an inner city. In middle school, I was a difficult child. And I always say the same qualities that got me into a lot of trouble when I was a kid are the ones that got me out of it, right? As an adult, just being really stubborn and trying to, I think my father is cracking up from the other room because he hears me. So,
hey, Dad.
So anyway, I ended up, and this is where, my early experience obviously shaped a whole lot of it. But then in ninth grade, I dropped out of high school in like March of 1997 to have my first son. And by the time I was 16, I had 2 children and had completely opted out of the public school system. And, as I reflected as I got older, I was like, oh, I was just like able to disappear completely, like dropped out of school 8 months pregnant, and like, there wasn't even a phone call, no like truancy officers looking for me, just like gone, right?
Wow.
And so it got real, life got real, and I was like, I gotta figure out how to take care of these kids, So thankfully, I was always very smart. I didn't have any learning challenges or anything like that. And so I homeschooled myself through high school. I got my GED when I was 17, and I started my freshman year in college when my high school class was entering their senior year. So I actually ended up being in college a year early, and really fell in love with school. I hated school from kindergarten. Like I never remember enjoying school at all until I got to college. And then actually really fell in love with it and realized like my aptitude for learning and writing and thinking and being in an environment where people were having, discussions about things that I was interested in. And I got interested very quickly in a couple of things. One is like equity in economic equity, particularly around, remember this is like the late 90s. So welfare reform is like a big conversation that was like impacting me. And so I spent a lot of my academic time understanding policy. And I'm like 19, 20.
I was there too. I remember those conversations. I was probably on welfare too. So yeah.
I was totally like in the system, studying the system, right? Trying to understand how these changes were going to impact me and my family, trying to understand the historical context of welfare reform and what it, and just being blown away by how blatant the racism and the racism was built like right into the system, and just from there, I continued to, do that work. I got my master's. I got my bachelor's in theater, but I had a minor in social sciences. I got my master's in psychology and studied specifically this track around public administration and social change. So like how to architect and lead for social good, right? Like what does that take at a human level, at a behavioral level, and at a policy level? Working in nonprofits, simultaneously like going to school and raising kids and, trying to figure out my education, and realized that I was never going to be able to afford the degrees that I had amassed unless I started making real money. And thankfully, right when I was starting to think about going to grad school, I met my now husband, who was super supportive and just really encouraged me to like, even though I was, in my late 20s, like to take everything that I was learning and offer it like as a consultancy, right? Offer trainings to people, offer workshops, consultant advisory, grant writing, all the skills that I had been learning. And so I started a side hustle, really liked it, really liked making money, on my own, negotiating, doing business, doing all the relationship building, and got really good at that. And just saw that like that interest, that I couldn't believe how the small business, like entrepreneur, online business world was so far behind any conversations on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I had been doing that work since 2008. And so by the time I was starting the business, like I was just blown away, like, oh, this whole industry is like a decade behind.
Oh, yes. I'll tell you, like, not many business books, not that I'm reading a whole bunch of business books, but I have, like for motivation or for just the nuts and bolts, because I was someone who never considered herself a businesswoman. And I'll tell you, it's really only been in this past, year and a half, 2 years that I have gained. It's when you get into the room. It's when you finally get into the room with the people who've been making the decisions and like sitting on the boards and whatever. and you're looking at him and you're like, dude's not so smart. Or, or I can do, oh, this is what it is. Like, I can do this. I can do this. So I read some business books. I've had some experiences. I've never cried reading one, but from the dedication for everyone using their vacation time, sick time, and lunch breaks to work on their side hustle, I see you. I want to say, so this is like 15 years ago. I had 3 little kids. I was a single mom on food stamps, getting assistance for my electric bill, doing what welfare reform made it really, really, really hard for me to get any help, even though I needed it, right? I legitimately needed it. So I'm just going to the electric company. I'm going to the gas company, like wherever I could go just to get, a little bit here, a little bit there, and doing jobs on Craigslist, trying to figure out, like trying to get my real estate license, like doing whatever I can to make ends meet because, I have these 3 little kids and where am I going to go? And no job would ever pay me enough to put them in daycare, that whole circle, right? So I remember this. And today, not into the, well, I'll say, I don't promote the hustle culture, but I hustle, I do. I'm like, I'm up at 4 a.m. and I'm working on my thing before the kids go to school, all that stuff. But I do believe, because of my background, because of these unique experiences with struggle, with poverty, with all of that I have a unique skill set that makes me a lot of the times way more qualified than the people sitting at those big tables making decisions. So I'm wondering, like, if you feel the same, if you like, what if you had to name like your 3 skills that set you apart, that have given you this success?
Yeah.
Not accidental, but it's also not something everybody can replicate. So it's like, what are your values? What are your skills? Give me 2 sets of things.
Yeah. So 2 things stick out really, really clearly. So, and there are 2 moments. I remember one time being in the elementary school of my son, my oldest son. And he was probably in 1st grade. Maybe, the boys must have been in 1st grade and kindergarten because we were at this new school. And I was like 19, 20. I had short pink hair, like the whole thing, right? And I remember being in the office and listening and like observing a mom asking for something she needed, and the secretary totally not helping her, like getting agitated. And I remember observing it, and as I was watching it, the mom got angrier and angrier and louder and louder. And something hit me, and I was like, oh, the secretary, obviously there is like all kinds of issues.
Yeah.
But I was like, for whatever reason, I didn't understand why at this time. But what I observed is like, I remember thinking to myself, the secretary can't hear her. She can't hear her. And the mom is not being heard. So she's yelling louder and louder. But the louder she's yelling, the more that the administrative person, in the front couldn't hear. And I wasn't like psychoanalyzing it. I was just making that observation. And I was like, I need to make sure, because I already knew that I was already facing all kind of bias, like with my kids and all kinds of stuff was happening. But I remember observing that and thinking, people are going to hear me. And in order for people to hear me, I'm going to need to learn how to talk to them in a way that they can hear me. And sometimes that's not going to be the way I want to say it. Right? But again, if I want to be effective, I'm going to have to figure this out, because people are not listening to me, and I knew it was wrong that they weren't. I knew that they were making a lot of they were relying making a lot of judgment based on stereotypes and what I look like and my age and their perceptions of all of that. But I was like, I can't change that. So I'm going to have to like navigate that.
Yeah.
And so, although now I do teach a lot about how messed up that whole thing is, right? Yeah. I have learned how to say very uncomfortable things to people and have it be heard in a way that they don't hear it from other people. Which means that I can be almost anywhere. I like really quickly, I can be anywhere. I can hear the language. I can understand the vibe, and I can code switch to show up to be who I need to be to get whatever I need to get, or to deliver whatever needs to be delivered. So that ability changed the trajectory, like that awareness and then the practice of it changed the trajectory of my career. The other thing, and that really came out of just a survival need. I was like, there are going to be times when like I need to advocate for myself, and I'm going to need to do it in a way that is going to get results, right? And then the other thing is that like I just don't quit. Like when you're
no, you don't.
You know, like when you're 16 and have dropped out, and the highest grade you really completed was 8th grade, right? Yeah. And you're like facing a pretty intimidating test, you know, that's gonna get you out of high school, get you into college, or, you know, or whatever. When you feel like years later, it was like statistics. I remember sitting in front of my computer, like crying because I needed to get a B or better in the statistics class. And like, I could not get it, right? And just sobbing in front of the computer. And I'm just like, whatever I'm feeling, like if I know that it is solvable, right? I know, like, I just don't give up.
I mean, I hear you. I feel like I'm always having these conversations. I have a lot of really great conversations because I'm surrounded by so many amazing people. And it's just like, oh gosh, I'm just the luckiest. I'm the luckiest. But I was talking the other day about failing, and someone, you know, said like, oh, you know, what have you learned from your failures or whatever? And I'm like, look, I've had things that didn't work out the way that I planned.
Right.
I've had things that didn't work out the way that I wanted them to. But I really just don't feel like I've ever failed.
Yeah.
Because I've never quit. Because failing is, and even when I've quit, I don't think I failed, right? Like there are times I'm just like, you know what, this is not for me anymore, right? I'm just not into it. It doesn't align. I'm not a good employee. Like so many things. I had to walk away and just figure something out. It's not like I didn't suffer for it, but I just had to figure something else out. And it's, you know, I talk about my business and I'm like, the success of this is inevitable because my effort is inevitable. Like
exactly.
It's just what it is. It's just what it is. It's not me being cocky. It's just, and I think that there's a survival, you know, there's a survival skill that we developed because I was also a teen mom. I also was the young one going into the situation, like going into the meeting with the principal or the guidance counselor and thinking, what are they going to think of me tonight? Getting ready for this call. I'm like, oh, my pink hair. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. I'm the publisher. I get to show up like this, right? And that's another exciting thing about the book, and just reminding everyone the buttons at the bottom, where I can't believe we've been talking for 45 minutes, but the buttons at the bottom, the Antiracist Business Book, there's so much heart and soul, but also like just real practical, pragmatic, like this is what to do. Like that you walk away with tools. Love this book. But there, and this goes for like all of the ancestors, we stand on their shoulders, we stand on the shoulders of giants. They had to navigate the world in such a way that we don't have to because of the work they did. And because of the work you're doing now in business, where you're going to the leaders, you're going to CEOs, you're going to, you know, these gigantic coaching companies, and publishers are putting out books and whatever. And I get to be a publisher now, right? Like I get to be a publisher now, where I dropped out of high school and then had to pursue my education in different ways. And I had children young, and I had to just like fit it in where I could get it in. But I get to be a publisher. I get to make decisions. I get to, you know, our motto is we raise the volume on voices that matter. That you're changing the face of business with what you're doing, so that the code switching, it happens. Right. You gotta, like I always say at the beginning of every interview, I'm always like, hello, hi, because I come in with those nerves, and then all of a sudden the train comes out, you know, New Jersey. But that's not going to happen so much. Like we see it happening right now.
Yeah, totally. That's totally it. And I feel like someone asked me this question recently about like, you know, degrees, because like I said, I love school. I love I love being in formal, like academic relationships with mentors who like push me in this particular way, right? So I love school for those reasons. But someone recently asked me, because I also believe that you don't need to have a degree to like get these like fabulous jobs. Like in our company, we don't require that people have any like masters or whatever for, it's just like, if you could do the job and you're great and you fit in the culture, like, I don't even care, like if you have a master's or not. But that was not always the case, right? In order for me to get where I am, I mean, I had to is like one of those things, but like I kind of had to. There are jobs that I have held that have been critical to me being in the position that I'm in, that I needed a master's degree to hold that job. You know what I mean? So like, I have this, you know, kind of complex relationship with higher ed, in that like I see all the problems with it. And I also love the experience of being in those formal academic institutions, but I can do that so that I can create spaces where other people don't need that.
Right. There's the understanding that you come in with, and also like, look, you don't have to have the backgrounds that we did to develop this compassion, empathy, understanding, the knowledge, right? The fact that everyone doesn't have equal access. So having these education requirements are just not going to make sense if you really want to get the best people, if you want to get the most diverse population and the most diverse ideas, and like really have a community that's vibrant and alive, right? You have to get to know the person, and it has to be treated on an individual level. But my experience says like, you don't need it to be here, but I love school. I fantasize all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go back to school. My kids are like, the 5 kids. They're like, what do you have everything you want. Why would you do that? Because I love to learn.
Right.
I love being in an academic environment. I love being in, community, in a classroom environment, sharing ideas. Who are your mentors? Who do you look up to in business and anti-racism?
Yeah. So some of the people that I am really, there's so many people. Ibram X. Kendi is obviously someone who anybody is working in this field is looking at as a mentor and example of like how to communicate with folks, really fleshing out some of the ideas for people to wrestle with, right? And even him, like, I don't necessarily agree with everything that he shares, right? But like the contribution that he's making has helped me shape my frameworks and like how I think about the work, right? Adrienne Maree Brown, even though Adrienne Maree Brown does not necessarily talk about her work as as diversity, equity, and inclusion work,
right?
As a facilitator and writer, and this idea that we're practicing being in community, that has been a big influence in the way that I talk about practicing anti-racism work, and also to this idea that like, to some extent, this work is science fiction because we are imagining something that we don't yet have. And I just love
yes.
It gives us this space to just, it just gives us this space to be compassionate with ourselves and realize that, oh, no one has it right. I mean, let's just be honest. We don't have a school system that is completely equitable, or a community that has it. We don't have the exam. We're like literally creating it as we're practicing it. So I just love that. So those are 2 people that jump out right away.
I love it. I love that you call it science fiction, because I'm such a science fiction nerd. And it really, and when people ask me like what my goals are for the business, and I say things like, I want a Black queer woman to be able to go into any big house in New York City, like walk into Penguin Random House, walk into Simon & Schuster and be like, hey, I heard Row House, not down the street because we live online for very real reasons, right? Because we want it to be accessible. Yeah, I don't need a building to do this. And say like, we heard they're giving this, $40,000 flat advance, this 40% royalty rate. Like I want that. We want to force the hands of the big guys. This is funny. I see, baby, you look really cute. Okay, I'll talk to you in a minute. So the next question is going to be about this. The next question is going to be about this. But yeah, it's hard to dream because everything that's happened so far has lived so far outside of my imagination, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm working on making my imagination bigger and stretching that. Okay, we have a question, and it's so funny because my 7-year-old, the youngest of my 5, I'll be with you in 5 minutes and I'll help you with that, okay? Because I'm doing work. Since you are both parents, can you share a bit about how businesses and organizations can specifically be building cultures that support parents, mothers, children? And I'll just say just real quick, I have to work from home because I was a single mom of 3 little kids. There was nowhere for me to put them that I could afford. There was no help that could support me. So I was like taking the odd jobs. I was figuring out how to do it. And I love that, like, my kid can come into a meeting. I have people on, they have their sick kids home. We're rocking them. We're doing the whole thing. I love that I can create that environment for people, that it's so acceptable, because I know that's how it is. But did you hear the question? Do you mean?
Yeah. I think that the biggest ones that come to me are really making sure that you have schedules and policies and practices that like accommodate families, right? So giving people the ability to work from home, unless like you happen to have the kind of job that actually needs to be at a physical space, right? To the extent possible, letting people work from home, letting people work with non-traditional schedules, like, and as much flexibility as they can. Sick time, like just making sure that people are going to be paid for sick time, and really thinking more about the work getting done than the hours and like the control of the person. I always say, like, manage outcomes, not people. Like, manage outcomes more and people less. If we have a lot of trust for our team, we don't have to worry about like if they're working from 9 to 5, right? Like, is the work done? Is it of good quality? Is there open communication? Like, that goes way farther than you might realize.
I love that you say that about like managing the outcome and not, the person, like not, I have an employee who is disabled and, has to deal with sleep issues. And I'm like, so we work on it. And it's like, well, what works best for you? Doing things as projects, right? Like, just give me the project. I'll finish it. I'll get it done on my time. I'll get it done on time. That's beautiful. And it also, there's so many different ideas about like how work should be. Someone asked me what my definition of professionalism was yesterday. And it's like showing up, doing the job well, working well with the people around you on your team, like having respect for the work environment, all of that.
And care for the quality of the work that you're providing. Yeah.
Yeah. All of that. Like, I feel like I'm always professional and I'm always having fun. And I'm, sometimes we cry in meetings, and that's just what happens at Row House, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. We're coming up on the end of the conversation. If anyone else has a question, we could probably fit one more in. But, as a book coach, I always give people, I always ask them 4 questions. So if you're out there thinking about writing a book, I would say the questions that guide me are, like, what's my book about, right? But what's my book really about? Like, where's this coming from? Why am I writing it? Like, what are my stories? How do I want someone to feel? Like, how do I want someone to feel when they're reading the book? Seen, heard, affirmed, whatever. But the last part is, what do I want people to know for sure once they're finished reading my book? So what would you want someone to know for sure? They've closed the book. What's the biggest takeaway that you want them to live with?
Oh man, there's a few, but I think the most important is that they have some responsibility in this journey.
Mm-hmm.
That like everybody. That's why I say, if this book isn't just for like entrepreneurs. It's like, if you run a business, if you work in a business, if you buy things from a business, if you have a spouse that works at a business, like if you know a business, like seriously, because it's about the way we interact. Like it's about the way that we are with each other, that we be in our bodies and in our own humanness, right? Like our own way of showing up. And that equity work, anti-racism work is all of our responsibilities. That's
I love that. I love that. And I'll say, like, we've sent this book out. You know, we had a really great campaign where people were inviting their bosses to read this book, and we sent it out to town council members, mayors, hospital administrators, executive directors at nonprofits, like politicians. We even sent one down to the governor of Florida. I don't know if he read it. I would bet he didn't, but he had one go to his desk. And it really is, anti-racist, yes, absolutely. Business, yes, absolutely. But it really is it's like a manifesto for how we should just be living in community everywhere where we are organizing. Yeah. And we want to bring the best people to the table. This book is going to help you get there. This book is going to help you. Now is the time that I have to invite, or not have to, it's my pleasure to invite ER back into the room to urge everyone to pick up this wonderful book again.
Thank you both so much, folks, to buy this book, obviously, both for yourself, but also encourage, the local library, public library. And if you're involved with an academic institution, let them know about this book. This is a great book, even for a high school level. Get it into your kid's school, because as we heard, 16 years old, there are people already out there who are building their adult lives, right? And we know that that's real. So I would love for young people to have access to this book in their high school libraries, because I think it would give people a lot of resources and tools to think about, like, oh, my career could be different. Like, I could have a very different life than what other people have told me I would have to have. So I think that's really exciting. So definitely, tell your friends. This would be a great thing for people to do a book club about. So consider that. And if you are, here as part of a business organization tonight, one of the business organizations we invited, we'd love for, y'all to co-sponsor a book club. I think that would be another really good thing to do. I'll be adding captions to this and putting it up on our YouTube channel in the next couple of days. So you also can send that around to folks who missed the talk. Make sure they know about it. Share it on social media. Do y'all want to shout out your social media handles so folks know where to find you?
Yeah, I'll let you end it. So we're at Row House Pub. So Row House Pub, PUB.
And I am on Instagram at just my name, Trudi, TrudiLebron. And if anyone is doing a book club, let me know. Send me DMs. I answer my DMs. Let me know. Let me know how things are going. What questions you have. I'd love to answer them.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I hope that you stay safe and well. And this book, I know, will be a continued success. So cheers to many, many more great things for both of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Good night, everyone.